Where once again we'll continue doing our previews for every NFL team. Today we're going to be discussing the New York Jets and their upcoming season. Before we get into the video, as always, make sure to leave a like if you enjoy and then subscribe if you are new. And also for this series in particular, make sure you comment down below what team you want to see next. But without further ado, let's get into previewing and talking about the Jets. So first, quick look at the major additions and losses for the Jets. The big one, well, I guess the big one's Justin Fields, but the first one we're going to talk about is bringing in head coach Aaron Glenn, who was the defensive coordinator with the Lions last year. Him and Ben Johnson are the two big losses that the Lions had on their coaching staff. But when you discuss it more for the Jets, you'll notice that, well, first, Steve Wilks is his defensive coordinator that he brought in, very experienced defensive coordinator. I really like Steve Wilks as just a coach in general. So I think that's a great guy to have alongside your defensive-minded head coach. And then their OC is Tanner Engstrand. I think I'm pronouncing that right. He is a first-year offensive coordinator. However, he has Scott Turner as sort of like this type of assistant. And Scott Turner is the son of very well-known offensive mind Norv Turner. And Scott Turner has a lot of experience himself. And one thing about his systems and schemes, I'm pretty sure I read on an article that they do a lot of under center and not a lot of shotgun. And getting to another one of the big addition, if not the biggest, being Justin Fields, their new quarterback that they signed. I looked it up, and he has a 110 passer rating under center, and in his career, and only a 76 passer rating in under the shotgun. So if the system is similar to what we've seen out of, I guess, the Turners, if it's correct that they run a lot of under center, it should be a beneficiary for Justin Fields, as that is sort of what he thrives in. Now, some people still aren't sure about the Justin Fields contract because he hasn't really proven much. But honestly, the contract he got, what was 2 years, $40 million? If you look at the money that quarterbacks are making, that's not really that much. Brock Purdy just a few days ago got signed a 5-year, $250 million contract to make about $50 a year for 5 years, and you're telling me you could get Justin Fields for $20 million? Justin Fields in his total contract isn't even making what Brock Purdy makes in a year, and he's only under contract for 2 years. So if you don't love Justin Fields after this season, you don't even have to play him because he's an expiring contract. So if you move on from him, trade for a guy, sign someone else, draft whatever, you can just have Justin Fields be a backup because he'll be a free agent that next season. So I don't even think it's that bad of a contract, considering it's only 2 years and considering he's only making $20 million a year for a quarterback. That's not that much. But obviously you need to help Justin Fields. So they replaced Tyler Conklin, who they lost, and they bring in Mason Taylor, the rookie from LSU. I really liked Mason Taylor. I think you could argue he was right up there with guys like Loveland and Warren. I still prefer Loveland and Warren, but I think I saw he could have went in the first round, Mason Taylor. So to get him there, I think was a great pickup. Oh, and obviously Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback that departed that they are replacing with Justin Fields. And the Rodgers experiment didn't really work in New York. Obviously, got hurt the first year, was out for the whole season, didn't even do anything for the team because he didn't get a chance to. And then it was a little bit of an underwhelming season that next season. Obviously, you saw some of the glimpses of him and Davante Adams, their connection sort of coming back to life, but it just didn't work out. And who knows where Rodgers is going to sign, but we're talking about the Jets, so if he signs with a team like the Steelers, when we come to talk about the Steelers, then we'll talk about Rodgers. But for now, we're going to stick to the Jets. Another guy they brought in to help Fields, their first-round pick, Armand Membu, tackle out of Missouri that they got with the 7th pick. I like him. I think he's a good, solid quality tackle. I think one issue with the tackle that got taken ahead of him, Will Campbell, was Will Campbell's had like all the uh, the arms length stuff. I'm pretty sure Membo's more of a prototypical build for a tackle, for an NFL tackle. So I think that's a good pickup for the Jets. We'll talk more about their O line later when we get to their offense, but they replaced the old Morgan Moses with a much potentially better and way younger option in Membu. And then also on the offensive side, they bring in Josh Reynolds. Now he's not Davante Adams, but he's just a solid player. Nothing too crazy for Josh Reynolds. He's just been a quality, depth option at receiver. He'll give you like 500 yards and 3 touchdowns on a solid season for him, so that can help out the Jets offense. They bring in Derek Nnadi to replace Javon Kinlaw. Now, Javon Kinlaw did get a big contract, I believe, from Washington, so maybe they wanted to avoid paying that, so they went for the Derek Nnadi route. And, I mean, Nnadi's a fine player. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it, Nnadi. But I don't even remember the contract they gave him. They gave him a $2 million contract, or that's his cap hit at least. He's a $1 million cap hit. So they basically paid him nothing. So you get just a decent D tackle for super cheap to replace Javon Kinlaw, who they let walk because he got a lot of money from Washington. Yeah, Derek and they did sign him. I think signed him to like a 2-year deal. And yeah, so you're not too upset at his contract. Then you bring in Andre Cisco, who I think's been on Jacksonville. He is your Ashton Davis replacement. Fine player. They're very, I actually like Cisco, so I think that's an upgrade over Ashton Davis. Then in the DB, you do lose DJ Reed, which is unfortunate. He goes off to Detroit. But honestly, he wasn't really having that good of a season last year for the Jets. He had very good years on the Jets, don't get me wrong, but the last year didn't really go too great for any of the corners, honestly, for the Jets. So they replace him with Brandon Stevens, the veteran, and then they also draft Aziri Thomas out of, I believe, Florida State. Don't know exactly where he got drafted. So honestly, I think Aaron Rodgers is better than Justin Fields, but I think for the direction the Jets should go in, Fields is better for them for the long term because he could be your long-term quarterback or not, or if not, he could be a bridge guy. And then I think, obviously, Davante Adams, you lose a talent like him. But outside of that, I think they got, and Hassan Reddick is a loss we didn't really talk about, and CJ Mosley. Those are very older players. Mosley was very good for the Jets, but I think his time there came up. And then Hassan Reddick, there was the whole contract dispute with him, and it just didn't really end well. And so that's not really a loss for them in terms of last season. If you get Hassan Reddick fully healthy this year, ready to play for your team, then maybe that's bad, but he didn't really play for you that much, so you're not losing anything there in terms of difference from last year to this year. So I think overall it was a very successful offseason for the Jets. I don't even know how much money they had as a team because they currently have, I don't know how much money they currently have, but they're still paying guys like Aaron Rodgers, I think, and CJ Mosley. So I don't think they had a ton to work with, but for what they had, I think they did pretty solid. Going more into their offense, obviously we already talked about Justin Fields. At the running back position, you have the two-headed room of Braylon Allen and Breece Hall. I really like Braylon Allen coming out of Wisconsin, and I really like the flashes that he showed. And then Breece Hall, we don't even know. They could trade Breece Hall, couldn't they? I think there was rumors that Breece Hall might get traded. I still think he's very good. Obviously, he had that ACL injury that kind of stunted his development a little bit. But he still is the trade rumor, so we'll see what happens with that. But for now, he's on the team. And then again, I mentioned before, I really like Braylon Allen. So if they do trade Breece Hall, I think Braylon Allen is perfectly capable of being that next running back for the team. Tight end wise, we talked about Mason Taylor. Really like him out of LSU. They don't really have a ton of depth outside of that. I mean, Jeremy Ruckert, he's okay. Looking at the O-line, they obviously drafted Olu Fashanu last year in the first round, and now you get Membo this year in the first round, so they're heavily investing in that O-line, which is much needed. You really need good tackles. It's been proven time and time again. Elijah Vera Tucker's been he's been okay for maybe not first round pick standards. I didn't know he was drafted in 2021. That was that long ago. Joe Tippmann, fine center. I like Josh Myers, who their backup center is. They brought in from Green Bay. And then John Simpson, another just okay guy they brought him in from Baltimore. It's just a fine O-line, nothing spectacular, I don't think, really, out of their O-line. You do hope to see a lot from your two first-round tackles in the last two drafts. I didn't hate Olu Fashanu. I don't think he had, like, an insane rookie season. But a rookie left tackle, it's really hard to play left tackle as a rookie, so it makes sense that he, has his ups and downs. But if him and Membu can work out, that's your tackles for a long time. And then finally, looking at their receiver room, you don't have a lot outside of Garrett Wilson. Now, there was all the Garrett Wilson trade rumors. I don't know if there was any truth to those Garrett Wilson trade rumors. But another reason I like them bringing in Justin Fields is him and Garrett Wilson were teammates at Ohio State, very successful when they were at Ohio State. So maybe them signing Justin Fields was a way to sort of keep Garrett Wilson from wanting out. Because we saw a lot of receivers get traded and switch teams and want out. And Garrett Wilson could have been one of them. But I think maybe bringing in a guy like Justin Fields, who he has a history with, who's played well with him, and I'd assume who likes him, that could probably keep him from wanting to leave, because he's really good. Garrett Wilson, if given the adequate quarterback play, can be really good. And the rest of receivers, you don't really have a ton that you're excited about. Again, Josh Reynolds can just be a decent 500-yard, 3 to 5 touchdown guy for you. Alan Lazard, one of Aaron Rodgers' friends he brought over, didn't really do a ton on the Jets. And then you got, Tyler Johnson, who they bring in from the Rams, Aaron Smith, but he was a 4th-round pick this year. And then Malachi Corley, I think, is the wild card in this receiver room. Western Kentucky, I believe. They got him in the 3rd round last year. He had his moments. Obviously had that one play where he dropped the ball before getting the end zone. I'm pretty sure that was him. But I still think Malachi Corley can be a very good receiver. And honestly, I think he could compete for being the 3rd best receiver on this team. Garrett Wilson and Josh Reynolds are the only receivers that I even have remote trust in if I'm the Jets. So if Malachi Corley can continue to develop, I think he can easily be that 3rd receiver. And I think that could take this offense to a much better level if they can maximize Malachi Corley. Because him, Garrett Wilson, Mason Taylor, Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, Justin Fields, and a decent O-line, I think it could be a decent offense. But I just think they need Malachi Corley to step up to do so, because Garrett Wilson can't do it all, and Josh Reynolds isn't going to do too much for you. So I think that's my biggest, story, how to describe it, but for the Jets offense is what happens with Malachi Corley. Now, moving on to their defense. Historically, they're going to have good defenses. They have good players on their defense, and you bring in Aaron Glenn, who led a pretty solid defense on Detroit. They had a lot of injuries that kind of definitely hindered them, but I think he's a very good defensive-minded coach. You also, as I mentioned before, bring in Steve Wilks. There's just a lot of former players on this Jets staff. I think that's good when your staff can have former players because they know what it's like. But looking more at this defense, first looking at the pass rushers, because they run a 4-2. It's a very interesting defense. A 4-2. I haven't seen that, but so they have a lot of DBs, I imagine, on the field at a time. But first, I want to look at the pass rushers. So obviously you have Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson. Now, Will McDonald had a very, very good season last year. His rookie season in 2023, he only had 3 sacks in his 15 games played, but he didn't get a single start. And then this year, he started 15 games and had 10.5 sacks, 1 fumble recovery, 2 forced fumbles, 3 pass deflections, 28 total tackles, 24 quarterback hits. He really took that step up, which is obviously what you want to see if you're the Jets. And then Jermaine Johnson, 2 years ago, he had a very good season. Or not 2 years ago, but his second year in the league, 2023, he had 7.5 sacks. But he only played 2 games last year. So obviously didn't really record many stats. But if you can get Jermaine Johnson back to his Pro Bowl form from 2 years ago, and Will McDonald continues to increase his play, and you pair that alongside Derek Nottie, who you bring in to avoid paying Javon Kinlaw a lot of money, and then, of course, Quinnen Williams, one of the better D tackles in the league, I think you can actually have yourself a top-tier D-line. Because that's, I mean, if you take Will McDonald's production last year and Jermaine Johnson's his last recent healthy season, that's 17.5 sacks right there. And you pair that with one of the better D tackles in football, I think he can be one of the better D lines in the league. And not to mention their linebacker core, you have Quincy Williams, brother of Quinnen Williams, who also has turned himself into a very good NFL player. And then Jamien Sherwood, who they extended or paid, because I think he was a free agent. They paid him this year. That front seven is very good. So I think the Jets will have a top defense, and I think it's going to come down to their secondary. Sauce Gardner obviously had an insane start to his career. One of the best 2-year starts you can have to an NFL career, it seems like, especially at corner. But then he kind of didn't have that good of a year last year for his standards. And then obviously DJ Reed didn't have the best season either, but he's gone. You bring in Brandon Stevens to be his replacement. You draft Aziri Thomas. You still have Michael Carter, who's a very good nickel corner. And in the safety room, you have Andre Cisco, who you brought in. You have Tony M. You drafted Malachi Moore. I really like the Malachi Moore pickup for them. I think this is going to be just like I said, Malachi Corley could really push the Jets' offense from being decent to good. I think the secondary is what's going to determine whether this Jets offense can be really good or one of the best in the league. So I think it all is under, because you're going to get good production out of that D-line and that linebacker room. And I don't think there's any questioning that. So I think it really boils down to that secondary. And they run a 4-2, it seems like, according to this depth chart, which means you have your 4 D linemen and your 2 linebackers. That's 5 DBs on the field. So there's going to be a lot of secondary, and they're going to really rely on them. So that's why I think they can be the turning point and decider of how great this Jets defense can be under Aaron Glenn. Quick look at their special teams. We won't dive too much into it. Just feel like we should show them love because they're players on the team too. Thomas Morstead, very consistent punter for a very long time, mainly for the Saints, but he played on Miami more recently. Anders Carlson, brother of Daniel Carlson. He had his, I think that's who that is. He had his, if I'm not mistaken, he had his struggles on, I think, Green Bay. Yeah, he played for Green Bay before he went to the Niners. He actually played on the Jets. He played 17 games with Green Bay 2 years ago, and then he played on San Fran and the Jets this season. He didn't really get many opportunities. He was 8 for 10 on field goals, 9 for 11 on extra points. And on his season in Green Bay, he's about an 80% kicker, high 80s. So I don't know how that honestly stacks up with the rest of the league. I think you want your kicker in the 90%. They also have Greg Zuerlein, I guess, too. So we'll see who wins that kicker battle. They also have Caden Davis. So got a lot of options there at kicker. And then Xavier Gipson, quickly. Honestly, their return room is great. Xavier Gipson, I think he might have been the one that had the game-winning return against the Bills on week 1 last year, but I'm not 100% sure. Kene Nwangwu, I think he used to be really good on the Vikings, if I'm not mistaken. So I think it's a very good special teams room. But we won't talk too much about special teams, and we're going to go now on to their record prediction with a floor, a ceiling, and an overall prediction. So first, to talk about the floor, I like to just find games or a certain amount of games or a number that I think they can somewhat easily win. Or I think they can win that game. And I don't think it's many. I don't think that's, I can't tell how good the Jets are going to be because we don't know how Justin Fields is going to be on this team and how the help around him is going to be. But I think they can get a win versus New England, just one of those games, or I think they can get a division win. I'll just say that. I think they can get at least one win in their division. I think they can beat the Saints, and I think they can beat the Browns, which means I think roughly their floor is about 3-14. I think that's a solid floor for the Jets. Now going into the ceiling, maybe they could take down the Patriots or get like another 1 or 2 division games. They could beat the Steelers if they don't sign Aaron Rodgers. They could maybe beat a team like the Panthers. So I think roughly their ceiling, if you take their 3 wins from their floor and you add the Steelers, you add the Panthers, and then maybe around 2 more division games, because the floor only had them winning about 1. I think 7-10 is a realistic ceiling for the Jets, which means if you rounded that out, their prediction would be 5-12. That's my final prediction for the Jets this year. Not the best season. If this were to happen, if they win around 3 to 5 games, I think what I said earlier is you just keep Fields on the team because he's a okay quarterback, and then you get your guy in the draft because there's Arch Manning might be in the draft, Lenoir Sellers, Nussmeier, Drew Aller. There's a lot of good quarterbacks in this upcoming draft. So I think if you do end up 3 to 5 games, you draft your quarterback. You'll just let Fields stay on the team because he'll be a free agent the next season, and then you go from there. But if they can fight for a playoff spot somehow, because Fields works out, then I think that puts them in a worse position because they might think Fields is the guy if he's not, and he might not be, even if they win about 7 games, and that might put them in a difficult position because then they might have to pay Fields again. So I think best case scenario for the Jets is they do end up only winning about 3 to 5 games, drafting their next quarterback, and then just moving on from Fields that next year. But I'm not fully out on Fields. I think he can still turn into a very good quarterback. So we'll see if that ends up happening. But that will conclude our quick little preview of the Jets for this upcoming season. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like. If you're new, hit the subscribe button. It helps out a lot. And again, in the comment section below, let me know your thoughts on the Jets and what team you want to see us or me preview next. But I'll see you guys next time. Peace.